Happy Sunday, and welcome back to Retake the Week. It's been another jam-packed, action-filled, all the good stuff week of Counter-Strike, and we've got another retake for you. It's going to be interesting, I think, to get into some of these topics. I mean, especially some of them kind of developing as we were preparing the show. But before we get into any of the details, any of the topics, any of the real retake, let's talk about who makes this show possible, and that's the members. Members get access to a bunch of awesome stuff because they support me and they deserve it. So they get access to interviews with members of staff behind the scenes. They get access to behind the scenes of this show where we discuss, some of the details that really we can't publicly super openly discuss, but we can kind of hint at to each other. And of course, prospect demos, which I think is the best part of it all. Watching the demos that I find to see what players I like and the things I like about them. So that's the members' benefits. Awesome to see from them. Just a few spoilers, things to come up for members. We've got an interview with a coach of a team at the RMR, who are also at Pro League. We've got the early release of the Blast Spring Final preview. And of course, this week, as always, 2 prospect demos coming live and uncut. All right, Quacke, thank you for joining me for another Sunday. I know it almost didn't happen with my internet service provider deciding to absolutely shit the bed. But how you doing? And let's promo that show again.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for you to just dip off, just fully freeze
it might
on the
happen.
camera and just...
It's been all over the shop.
Yeah, would be funny. No, it's good. Yeah, we have a show out. The episode with Bird from Sky finally came out, which was, listening back to it, it was probably the funniest one we've done so far. Fair warning, the first 15 minutes of this are outright boring because we were asking questions about Bird's very early career, which is not no shade, not slide on him, but no player's early career is particularly interesting. But then we get into some of the fun stuff, some of the stuff about talking smack about coaches who didn't do anything, talking about transfers that almost happened. Did you know that JL almost played on Lyngby Vikings and they said no to him because they thought he was a bad player? And now he's probably getting MVP,
wasn't he? That was the weirdest part.
At that point, I think he was. Yeah,
he's trying to AWP.
Yeah, because he around that time he was AWPing. He was AWPing with Selecta and stuff. With Zeus's, or I think that was Edward's thing. They said no to him because they thought he was a bad player. He just didn't follow instructions or anything. Later today he's probably going to be ESL Pro League MVP. There's some funny details. The big thing which I thought was the most interesting to hear about was some of the stuff around his radar accusations, how some teams basically did some pretty unsportsmanlike stuff to try to prove that he was radar cheating and failed. And Bird is fun. He didn't hold back any punches when he was talking about this stuff, and it was really fun. You should go watch that. It's show is called Lead Speak, in case you've forgotten. It was a very fun episode to record. Just stick with it after the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, one of my big conclusions from that is, fuck those Albanian guys. Just fuck them. They just seem like giant pieces of shit if everything reported is true. So that was an amusing detail to learn about. But speaking of amusing details, amusing stories, developments, pieces of shit, Astralis have announced the return of cadiaN. Now, of course, the piece of shit in question here, it's as always, it's going to be just the Astralis org, but I think for everyone, this was a bit of a shock. It's been obvious for a little while now that the Astralis device AWP IGL project was stagnating. They came out the gates with insane results, but also, quite importantly, ridiculous fragging across the board. You had Stown and Yabby still actually do it to this day, 0.75-ish KPR, big rifle impact. Then you had Device putting up superstar AWP numbers in a lot of these games. It didn't feel sustainable, and everyone who felt that way ended up being very correct. They're now not even making it through a lot of group stages. It's not just the playoffs where they're failing against better teams. They just haven't been able to get it done. And so the obvious answer was, how do we get Device off the IGL position? Good AWPer still, that's clear and evident. How do we do it? And they've not gone for Hooksy, as a lot of people would have suggested. I think even, actually, myself, I kind of would prefer Hooksy, but that's not the point. They've gone with cadiaN on a rifle, which, if you've ever seen cadiaN on a rifle, it's not a decision made for the fragging now, is it?
No. No, I think if you took Hooksy or cadiaN, I would have preferred Hooksy, I think. I don't have any particular reason for thinking that. I just think that would be it. I just think that would be a good move. But I think whether you take Hooksy or cadiaN, I think they're playing similar positions either way on a team like this, and I think the result would have been similar. I'm not particularly impressed with cadiaN's, like, I don't have a lot of opinions around cadiaN's rifling level. Um, but yeah, he's not gonna be a top 20 player on Astralis. That's not the point. Because he isn't hopping. Like, he just isn't. So, because remember, cadiaN was a top 20 player. Was it last year or the year before?
Last in 2023, he was 18th with his
Yep.
fantastically impactful 1.09 rating.
Yep. Let's yeah, I think I would have preferred to see Hooksy, but it's gonna be interesting to see cadiaN. The reason why, I have a funny thing about this, and I think my take on this move is that it is absolutely not gonna work. I think stuff is gonna flare up between Stown and Yabi and cadiaN again. They say they've put that aside. I honestly, I don't buy it. And one of the reasons why I think it's absolutely not gonna work out is because this is Astralis, and I think if it was the other way around, where cadiaN was on a team and Stown and Yabi left Astralis to come back to him, I would absolutely believe it. I would absolutely believe that this is a team that's going to work. But now they're on Astralis, who seem absolutely incapable of facilitating anything other than failure, despite having very good players. So I think it's absolutely not going to work. I think this is in whether it be 6 months or a year, it's going to have failed. There's going to be another transfer, maybe, I don't know who it would be, but something's going to happen. I do think cadiaN has the chance to bring out a much higher level out of both Yabi and Stown individually, and that might lead to some success. There might be some playoff results. I don't think
Yeah,
this is Astralis that wins events. It should be, but I don't think it is.
yeah.
And if this was a heroic roster, it would absolutely win events. So I don't know. There's just something fucking cursed about Astralis. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, buying
Um,
into the Astralis curse is something. I think a high level of Stown and Yabi, I'm not sure. An interesting detail for me is that now that he's off the AWP, he doesn't have to consider himself at all, really, in terms of setting himself up, holding lines, all that good stuff. No, he's here to set up his star level AWPer, who has been outstanding in this year alone, like just as an AWPer. Two riflers he knows are mega,
yeah.
that he has worked with before. He knows what they like to do, he knows what they like to go for, he knows how they like to play. And then he has a piece that's kind of been like a soldier for a little while now, Astralis and Stare. I think it's a decent composition. It's a better roster composition than we had with Device or PyGLing. I just, yeah,
Oh yeah.
I see it as an upgrade. I just think it's going to take them a while to get back into the flow, especially readapting to his apparently rather singular style that not everyone really goes for, not everyone really enjoys playing. So, interesting development, but also a little detail you brought up. There's been an article posted. Might have been some classic Astralis fuckery to get this move approved for Blast. What's going down?
This literally just came out. Astralis, the title is Astralis got cadiaN in for the fall final on an emergency sub. Was it against the rules? Question mark. Written by Mira. Supposedly the details around how cadiaN was apparently transferred after the roster lock for Blast Fall Finals was already done, which is not allowed. That deadline was apparently September 4th, which is 2 weeks before cadiaN's signing. So basically what Astralis did to get cadiaN in was a medical emergency, they claimed. They didn't mention it was bro. They didn't mention why, but they were approved a medical emergency. And then a couple of days later, as presumably the other teams participating find out about this medical emergency, a lot of people contacted bro's agent. His Twitter handle is sports psych fa bro, but Fabian Broisch is his name basically. He's the agent of bro. A lot of people reached out to him and were like, "Is bro okay? What's like? I heard he has some health issues." He basically publicly tweeted, "He's fully fine. He's fully healthy, ready to perform, no problem." So, I mean, look, both Astralis and Blast, they declined to comment. They say like we can't comment on individual players. Like they wouldn't want to comment on like how bro is doing, which, like, it's not like a fucky union thing. It is a way to get out of the question. but I don't think it is like. I think it's fair that they wouldn't speak about that if there was an actual medical emergency, but the fact seems to be that there isn't, and they just wanted to play with cadiaN, and Blast have sort of played along, and
Blast?
I don't know. It's
Astralis?
absolute. Yeah,
Conspire? Man, if only there
I
was
mean, it's not
some
the
kind of history.
I think Blast are just kind of limp-dicked when it comes to enforcing their own substitution rules, because this is the third time that they have problems with substitutions.
Yeah.
Evil Geniuses, remember when they were trying to build a roster with Masuta, which didn't end up happening.
Yeah, for some reason.
Last minute, that transfer fell through from Vitality, and they had already locked in Masuta for their roster for Blast Fall groups in 2022. They were given a permission to replace him with Hext, despite the fact that they were already locked in. EG also had other substitutes lined up. They had Rush registered. They had Warburg as a coach, so it definitely could have. They didn't need an emergency substitution there, but they were given it. There was another time when Blast originally allowed FaZe to play with Config instead of Rain for Blast spring groups in 23. Then teams complained, and they were like, actually, Config was already registered as a sub for Heroic, which they didn't actually submit. I remember this. Heroic basically had the Config as a substitute for the event prior, and then didn't submit a new substitute for Blast spring groups. And Blast just basically went, well, if you didn't submit a new one, we're just going to assume you still have the same sub. So Config was already registered. Then they approved him for FaZe, and then teams complained, and they had to go back on that. And that was when FaZe played with S-Tag for that event. Cursed as fuck. And then, yeah, like this is not the first time. So this is the third time. Nothing is going to come of this. I think he's absolutely still going to play fall final. I don't think there's going to be a U-turn on this. I think teams are going to complain. I think it's gonna be a bit forgotten, but it's another piece of Astralis fuckery. But actually, if you would indulge me, I can move on to my little small site, Retake, because
Well,
this
I
is
do
actually
want to
very much
blast
related to that.
Astralis quickly again. I do
Okay,
kind of
go
want
for
to
it.
bring
Go
this
for it.
up. I want to bring up basically the reason I think Blast have let this happen is because, due to their, frankly, ridiculous format of how they run their season, how uniconic everything is, it's bad enough that we have to go from start of the season, very first event pretty much for Astralis. They can cheese their way through to the big like LAN finals, which of course iconically named Blast Premier Fall Final 2024. I mean, who's going to forget that?
Yep.
And it's bad enough that it's also Astralis are now completely dogshit without this move. If they don't allow the change, Astralis seemingly were not going to be playing with Bro anyway. It'd be a coach stand-in. That's just a dead team on arrival at their signature marquee event for the season. They'd rather just allow some bullshit. They'd rather let a team get away with literally breaking their rules than actually have to enforce them and make their product at the end of it worse. Like they'll skew a bit of fair play just to get more views. Is essentially, I think, the way they've thought about it. And if I was running a tournament, I'd want to do it, but I think there's some sort of commission, which I think uses the word integrity a lot. I mean, I know they barely exist, but I feel like this would be another one of the things I'd expect them to have an opinion on it, considering it's completely pissing on the idea of integrity. But hey, fuck it. You do you, Kings. Slay. Go crazy. Make shit up. But yeah, we can get onto the small site. You can bring up your little detail you want to lock into. Is it going to be a piece of cheese as well? Is it going to be some bollocks that shouldn't really be possible?
It's going to be a bit bollocks. You've just put a thought into my head. I wonder if there's like an E6 staff Discord server out there where they like discuss this for fun. Like
there's just two people
every
like,
time.
should we do something? Oh man, I don't know. I'm pretty busy already.
I mean, they probably already decided we're not going to do shit. But I wonder if they're just like somebody sends a link and they're like, "This is interesting. This is some real bullshit." And then like not realizing that they should absolutely do something. But yeah, anyway, my small site for this week is related to the Shanghai Major stickers. Because there's a funny thing, which is that by September 7th, all of the RMR invited teams had to have locked in their main roster. Perfect World calls it the core roster, which is a bit misleading wording because a lot of people assumed, me included, that meant what core usually means, 3 out of 5, which means you can make 2 changes even after that. But it also clearly states in the invite sent that core in this case means the full 5. So 5 players being invited. They had to be locked in by September 7th for the invite teams, and I would assume that they needed to be locked in by the match you qualify in the close qualifier. You also had to lock in the full 5. That 5 is the 5 which gets locked in for the RMR. Or maybe even when the close qualifier starts. Because yeah, I think Cloud9 are still anyway. What I'm about to get to is you were still allowed to make changes after that. You were allowed to change or add a substitute to your roster up until September 22nd, which is today. And that means that effectively you were allowed 1 change. The only thing is then 1, you don't have a substitute for the rest of the major cycle. You've already used your substitute. You're not allowed to use another one. 2, the player you change out is not allowed to play for another team with a chance at the major. And 3, this is the interesting thing. Your core roster remains the same, and that is the roster which is entitled to stickers in the game. And this is the funny part, because some of you might realize we've had changes done to several RMR teams. So, in that time span. So first off, Cloud9 were already kind of cheesed in by the fact that they still had Perfecto on a contract. So they basically said that, oh, our main roster is basically what they have now, minus Inters plus Perfecto, because then we have the Boomich, Alex, Perfecto core, and we could get a close qualifier invite. Nice. So they basically cheese their way in there. Then obviously immediately sub out Perfecto for Inters, and that works out. They qualify. They're in the RMR. If they qualify for the major, though, Inters is still the substitute, and substitutes don't get stickers. That is the bottom line. So Inters would be without a sticker. Perfecto is still entitled to a sticker in this case. And that's interesting. Because of the new rules, you have to sign, like physically sign your signature on a piece of paper in Shanghai in front of the Valve staff, because they realized that so many people they didn't really like that people were making super ornate, complicated signatures that weren't actually really signatures. They were just like pieces of artwork. A lot of people commissioned actual artists to make these. And some actually just like took a slightly handwritten font and just wrote their name, and they were like, that looks good, and then submitted that. Which got rejected. Quacke did that last major. So the new rule is you have to be in Shanghai. You need to sign the piece of paper with a pen. And I think there's a time limit. Like you have to do it in under 8 seconds or something like that. So you can't like draw something super ornate for hours. But that means that Perfecto can, with his own money, can buy a plane ticket to Shanghai, show up, sign a piece of paper, and fly home, and be entitled to what I think is at least a couple of $100,000 in sticker revenue from Shanghai. And the same applies to Bro. If Astralis qualified, it applies to Bro. If TSM qualify, it applies to Altex. And if Gamer Legion qualify, it applies to Andu. And the players who will instead be without a signature, no matter what, they cannot get a signature as far as the rulebook says, are Inters, cadiaN, Sera, who came in for TSM, and whoever replaces Andu and Gamer Legion. And that's just a really funny thing. And the bottom line there is that I think a lot of people are going to be pissed if there isn't a cadiaN signature for the Shanghai major. I think cadiaN might be pissed, but I also think that they would have known this. Originally, I thought it also applied to NIP. I issued an article with that headline. That's obviously Dust2's angle into this, Dust2 Sweden's angle into this whole debacle. So that's what I wrote about. I have talked to NIP management. They didn't confirm directly that Meston was on the main roster, but they did confirm he would have a sticker, which is their way of saying he is on the main roster, I think. So yeah, it doesn't apply to them. There's no Alex sticker. If the player who got removed don't show up to Shanghai, there's just going to be 4 signatures for that team. So before somebody says they obviously go to the sub next, like, no, that's not the case. So we are gonna have some sticker fuckery in Shanghai, and we are probably, like, given Valve's track record with major shenanigans, we're gonna have a rule change in the next major when it comes to stickers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my small site for this week. Just a fun sticker shenanigan thing. Because yes, cadiaN is officially registered as a substitute, most likely for the Shanghai Major.
Yeah, no, it feels a bit silly, doesn't it? The idea that
Yeah.
as a substitute, like literally not able to play for this team, like listed as a sub just because I was starter, now I'm subbed out. I can go just sign a piece of paper and make my cut of the team sticker mode.
Yeah.
The team that doesn't fucking want me, I would do it. Fuck them. Like, you don't want me to play? You don't like me? Even if it's my choice not to play, I don't play with you guys, but I can take your money?
Yeah.
Let me go take your money. Hello, what up, China Air or whoever the fuck services Shanghai?
Here's a message to those guys, to Bro, Altix, Perfecto, and all them guys. Like, on the off chance anyone is listening or anyone is connected to them, go there and take a picture as you're signing it, because I just have this image in my head of like Perfecto in like hoodie and everything, just signing a piece of paper just like this, and like shaking his hand with the Valve rep just like this, posted on Twitter and being like fuck you. Like that's the image I have in my head, because they got a bit fucked over. Bro especially, I think, got extremely fucked over.
Yeah.
And
Medical
the way Astralis
emergency?
didn't
I don't know, I'm signing just fine right now.
yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Just he shows up in like an arm, like one of the like an
A
arm band,
sling,
like this. Yeah. Sorry, I have to sign with my left hand.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
That would be so fucking funny. Just post it on Twitter. Infinite Aura, legend forever, esports legend.
Yeah, so it's an interesting detail. I think it'll, if there is any of that sort of stuff going on, it'd take a certain amount of pettiness to go through with it, but I got a feeling someone's going to do it. So, yeah, interesting detail. I'm sure the change that will happen, knowing Valve, it won't be, oh, the sub can now get the signature, the person who comes in. It'll be, no, you can't make a change in that 3-week period. Locked is locked. Eat shit. That's probably going to be Valve's approach because they don't like us. It'd be the sub would get the signature in Dota, but this is CS, so we don't get the same privileges.
The other slight tidbit is that Perfecto, Altix, and those guys are also locked out of transferring to another major qualifier team, which is interesting because Altix is basically playing for Sashi at this point, but Sashi need to play with Quest in the RMR, which they qualified for. And also Perfecto is obviously constantly tied to tier 1 teams. Like if Spirit want him, if VP want him, whatever, they have to wait until after the major. Even if they do, up until today, they still have a chance to register a substitute. It cannot be Perfecto. He's already locked in for Cloud9. So
yeah, unfortunate for them. I guess those guys will have to wait till post major to make those moves
next year. Yeah,
basically next season. So yeah, that's the end of it for Perfecto, I think, as far as joining a tier 1 side this year. Bloody hell. But let's move on to my small site Retake. I do prefer it with Retake. I don't like your suggestion. I'm going to add it back. Yeah. It just doesn't roll for me. But my point is, I've ranting a lot, not ranting, just tweeting a lot recently about academy sides, and I want to lock in on just exactly how good they're getting, because we don't have We Play Academy League, which is kind of the way teams could get to experiment. Get it wrong. That's how you do it. You go to the We Play Academy, and you've got a roster. You're basically trying out a bunch of kids for a lot of these teams. And you see how they gel. You see how your coach is able to prep them. You see which ones have actually got talent, which ones you want to keep. And it's a trial and error process, and some teams got it right more often than others, and some needed a few tries. But currently, without this safety net, with teams essentially entering real events, we have Monty Gen, Navi Junior, and Spirit Academy. Currently, I'll talk about some teams that have recently been picked apart, but those 3 teams are legit, like, borderline top 50 teams in the world, beating tier 3 and tier 2 opposition regularly, and in some of these events, looking like the best teams there. ESEA advanced to the 2 best teams without contest, essentially ended up being Spirit Academy and Navi Junior. Monty Gen have been beating Passion UA, Zero Tenacity, Alternate Attacks, DMS, Team Space. Like, these are tier, like, I guess 2.5 teams that are just, they occasionally have forays where they'll do well at tier 2 cups, but generally just the mainstays of like lower level men's teams. Just 2-0ing them left, right, and center. Like, these are genuinely talented rosters with really high levels of play. I watched a Makaze demo. It's going to be out for members this week, or I think this week on Thursday. Bloody hell, the protocols on Navi Junior for utility might be better than G2. Like, I watched G2 today because I was out yesterday. miss or decide not to throw the proper CT Smoke on Inferno, a map they pick, causing them to get ripped apart twice by a boosted player. Navi's academy is throwing better util sets than these guys. Like, they are actually so well drilled, really talented. Sure, a lot of them are a bit unpolished, a bit wild. They're 16, 17-year-olds for the most part. But these academies are bananas, and I thought I'd highlight it because I think some of these guys may not even get full credit. I think Monty Gen, for a lot of guys, you see Gizmy, you even see like Ryu. You're like, oh, I saw them briefly play with Monty. I wasn't too impressed. Like, personally, I thought Gizmy didn't show his full skill set when he got promoted. Like, he's taking very different fights when he's on the academy side. He's more of a hard entry. He's more set up for openers. When he got the promotion, it didn't really shine. But on the academy, these guys play really well together. I'm super impressed. And I would have had to include Malzahn XT and Young Ninjas if they didn't just get kind of butchered and mostly sold off or promoted or put into different rosters across Tier 2. Because, yeah, those guys are rebuilding again now. So those guys would have been a part of it. But all in all, we've got some crazy academies, great talents coming up. And it's going to be an exciting time for me and anyone else who's really into the prospect side of the game.
Yeah, I checked this out now. Both Navi and Spirit Academy have rosters with an average age of 17.
Yeah,
and that's average. That's average. And Navi have a whole other academy. They literally just launched another Navi youth team below them with like 14-year-olds. Like, it's this.
Oh, and do
it's
you know
kind of
who
crazy.
the sorry, this was a detail that just came to me yesterday because I was looking it up. Do you know who the coach for Navi Junior is? Don't look it up. I mean, if you're looking at the page, it'll say it. But
no, I know. Navi Junior is Coolio and the Hungarian player, and Navi Youth is Snatchy, the old Polish opera.
Yeah, and Coolio, he's in this position. I was like, wait, this guy already? I checked. He is 24. Like, they're developing a coach as well, who was actually the Navi youth coach originally. He got promoted to junior with this batch of players, and he's worked them into quite the unit. Like, this is really impressive work. Developing fresh coaches, this is new meta shit. Like, developing players is one thing, to promote them. Developing players to sell them is another. Developing a coach? Who the fuck even does this? Like,
yeah,
this is nuts. I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, there's an interesting little rivalry between Navi Junior and Spirit Academy, because the game they played in the advanced final, which was a best of 5, Navi won 3-2, which in practice meant that they went 2-2, since they had a 1-map advantage with which is fucking crazy. Spirit actually go 2-1 up. If that's a best of 3, Spirit win. But yeah, they go 2-2, I guess. But yeah, with the free map. That was the 10th. That was the 4th game they played in 10 days against Navi Junior. And it was so even. Like, on the 11th, Navi beat Spirit 2-0, 13-8, 39. Nice. Literally 4 days later, Spirit play Navi, and Spirit win 13-11, 16-13. It's 2-2 in maps at this point. Then the 17th, 2 days later in the same event, which was European Pro League, Spirit go 1 map up, 13-9, and then Navi take it back, 2-1, reverse sweep. And now they go into this final. Navi have a 1 map advantage. Spirit, they go up, they win 2 maps to Navi's 1. Navi win the opening, and then Spirit go by, and then Navi close it out on the final map. Like, this is some fucking this is some phase Navi 2022 kind of shit. So
legendary,
yeah. And all of these guys, like, this is the future generation. I don't think there's any question that this is the next sort of. I think that this absolutely is the next Mouse NXT sort of generation. They might not be on Navi, they might not be in Spirit, but one way or another, I'm absolutely convinced we're gonna see players like Makazi and Kyosuke and those kind of guys, like, in the tier 1 in the next 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely think that is the case. Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, watching these games, like, I tweeted about it the first time these guys faced each other in a final, and I was like, the big headline matchup, Makaze Kyosuke. They're both hard entries. They both take, like, 27 to 30% opening K attempts, crazy skill, high headshot percentage, rifle monsters. And man, you'd look at them, and a lot of these matchups both end up topping the scoreboard, averaging 0.78, 0.75 like kills per round, just going dueling endlessly. But the rest of the teams, like, the talent on these teams is still really high. Like, Krabeni on Navi Junior as a rifler, really good. I've been impressed in certain maps by, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I think Kumtree. The Orpa for Navi Junior has had some good maps. He's 16, one of the more inconsistent pieces on that roster, but his highs have been really, really clean. I think, like, not too explosive, but a polished little player. Spirit Academy's Orpa Alcarin is quite often up there in the fragging numbers. He's also, I think, 17.
Yeah.
Crazy. And I've seen so many crazy rounds out of Mokujin that I just have to assume he's got something special about him. The numbers are always a bit whatever, but the rounds he wins sometimes, I'm like, this kid he's got something in him, like a clutch factor maybe, but there's something there. So no, super exciting. And we're not even talking about Monty Gen. We're not even talking about some of the NXT players we've seen released recently, some of the young Ninjas players who've received promotions or opportunities across the scene. This is a great time to be following youth. I love it. Right.
Yeah.
Playoffs time, EPL. Let's finally talk about the big event going on right now. Wow, what an event. Let's talk about the finalists. One of them predictable. I said it on the double swing. The number one pick of the draft should be Na'Vi, and I was proven right again because they've made the grand final. Awesome, good job for them. But the more interesting story, the one that most people are going to focus on, the upset run, the surprise, Eternal Fire. Now, some of us had more faith in them to do this than others, and they did get, well, almost a lucky draw. They did have to beat Vitality to go and do it, and my god, what a series it was. Nubis having to be taken to overtime for Eternal Fire to actually confirm their own map pick. It could have been over there because Vitality do take their own map. And then we get how many overtimes? I think three overtimes. I think
they were into the third. Yeah,
the third overtime it takes to get them separated on the final map of Inferno. What a clash! Xantares 1.31 rating, Zaiwu 1.4. The big names came to play, and they actually managed to squeeze it through. Not a convincing win. I don't think this puts Eternal Fire really into the super elite conversation yet. They don't really move into like the top 6 teams, but they're really starting to establish themselves as a true threat. When they get, like they said, they revamped the system. They got that sort of less predictable aspect going. The talent shone through, and they took care of MRVR. They're in a grand final. What do you think their odds are into Na'Vi? BO5. Na'Vi struggled in BO5s. What do you think their chances are? Put it like a percentage. Give us your take.
I actually think it is something like a 30, 40 for Eternal Fire. I think Na'Vi still have the edge. Maybe not 40. That's a bit close. I think 30. Yeah. 30 is probably good.
Okay.
I think Eternal Fire have struggled against Na'Vi. Na'Vi have struggled in best of fives. Na'Vi should take this. Na'Vi have by far the better individuals so far. Like Na'Vi have, aside from Centaurus, all the MVP candidates pretty much. And they have 4 players who could take that, I think. They have good IGL, clever IGL. They should take it. But I think Eternal Fire are just a different team at the moment. Like I don't know. I think it's very matchup dependent, and it's really gonna depend on like the vibe on the day. I think it's gonna feel that's a lot about how I feel about Eternal Fire. And Alexi B said it himself. Like he said, it's a different team this event. They play completely different. Like at this point, they are super strong in this one event. They have been so far. It could be a very interesting game. I absolutely don't think it's a walkover, as some people are saying. People said that yesterday's second semifinal was the real final. I honestly don't think so. I think I would have given Eternal Fire even better odds if they were playing against G2. I think that's a near 50-50 game, to be honest.
That's a bit far. I was about to say, that's fair to say it's a closer game. Would not go as far as 50-50, but it's a closer matchup. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, considering how they played yesterday, I think in G2, I think that's a near 50-50. I won't take Eternal Fire to win. I think Na'Vi are going to close it out. I think Na'Vi are the best team in the world right now. But I think it could be close. Like I think Eternal Fire absolutely could take a map, maybe even 2. We might see an actual 5 mapper. They could get a win out of this. Like they could. Yeah, it's absolutely. I'm not locking Na'Vi in like 100%, but yeah, it's gonna depend a lot. Xantares has struggled against this Na'Vi team so far because they have played each other quite a few times, and honestly, like Na'Vi have their number. They win all of the maps they've played so far this year, bar 1, which is I think there's 7 maps in total. Yeah, 7 maps in total this year, including the major quarterfinal. In each 3 of those series, Eternal Fire have either won a map or taken it to overtime on at least 1 map. So I won't say that's 50-50. It's more like 30-70, I think. So yeah. anything could happen. This is Eternal Fire's best event yet. Like it is. So
It is
I'll absolutely
easily
take
the best version
to
of them
take
we've
it
ever
up.
seen. Yeah, in terms of
Yeah.
not just, I mean, the individuals isn't actually that crazy. It's mostly a Xantares show, but decent level out of Arcadia, out of Woxic as well. Nice to see. But no, the
Mm.
calling has been better. The structure that they use in their rounds, far, far, I think, more layered, more hidden the way they're playing. They said there was an attempt to avoid themselves getting hard read all the time, and there has been some. I think Apex was able to get the read on them a few times, but it was good enough that they were able to actually have a chance. You know, it wasn't just pure headbanging; it was also being in the right place at the right time. So yeah, glad to see that. I'd give them a map. I think if I had to put a bet on right now for an exact scoreline, I'd take Na'Vi to win 3-1. Probably an Eternal Fire can squeeze out maybe an Anubis or an Inferno win if it comes through on the veto. I can't, off the top of my head, remember Navi's Perma. Navi's Perma's Vertigo. So yeah,
Vertigo,
I
which
can
is a good
see.
map for Eternal Fire.
Yeah, so I can see an Anubis pick being a viable one, an Inferno pick being viable. Uh, those are the maps I'd want to see played if I'm Eternal Fire, and hopefully take one of them home to make my 3-1 prediction correct. But there's some other stories I think we need to touch on quickly for the rest of the event because it's not the only game that happened. Firstly, we have to congratulate Na'Vi for big event grand finals in a row. I think for them, it's not so much. Okay, I'll say it again. I've said it before. I have to keep saying it. The major win was a fluke. This is not the same team. Like, it's a really like big shift in the way the individuals are performing. I think Wonderful having not necessarily elite performances, but just being solid and not having as many crash out maps has been big for them. But then, yeah, consistency out of the rifles, the calling and the system still phenomenal. They've really proved themselves to be currently on track for Team of the Year. They win this. I think they still have to win the major for it to be out of contest, like no more debate. But I think they're definitely going to be favored going into it, and they have been playing so well. So yeah, big up Na'Vi, massive respect. Keep it up. It's been beautiful to watch.
I think all of them are pretty good. I think Ime is showing, he keeps showing this good level. Like it does more and more look like they have just fixed Ime at this point.
Yeah.
They've finally made him work. And I think it doesn't really show in the stats sheet, but I think Bit has been pretty big. I remember like he just has these moments where like kind of odds defying, like against G2 yesterday, there was one which really stood out to me, which was an ancient. He's in a one-on-one against Nico. And like, oh, Nico has the information of where he is. Like Nico knows he's gonna win. Like Nico's obviously gonna win this. And Bit just swings him, one tap, delete. Like that sort of moment is like an impact that I think it's a bit random. Like it is a bit lucky, I suppose, as well. Like he took a swing and Nico was there, and he hit that shot out of mechanics. But you don't see that sort of moment out of a lot of players, and he's doing it fairly like like time and time again. Like he keeps having big moments, seemingly out of nowhere. And Bit was the worst player on that map, like by frags, not by rating, but I think that's clutches and like impact. By ADR, by kills, whatever. He was the worst Navi player on that map. And I still think that sort of impact is huge. Because that puts him onto match point, I believe, in that game. All of them are really good. JL is one of the guys who really stands out, of course. Still, he is going to be MVP. I think the only way he is an MVP is if they lose and Xantares drops a very good final rating.
Yeah.
I don't think he can get overtaken with a 146. I don't think he can get overtaken by Emma. I don't think he can get overtaken by Bit. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I saw someone say this. Navi have the best team in the world without having any of the best players in any of the best players in the world. If you
Yeah, no one's
say
in
that way.
contention for the best player in the world. They've got players who, like,
Yeah,
you said this. JL's going to be up there, isn't he? Like at the end of the year, he will
yeah,
be really far up there.
he's gonna be top 5. I think he is. But they don't have a Zaiwu. They don't have a Monesi. They don't have a Donk. They don't have. I think even Nico could be like someone who probably should be in that sort of conversation, even if he has had a bit of an off year. They don't have those guys. So yeah, like they have more of the mouse kind of caliber of players, I think. I think you could really parallel some of these players to like Assertion, a Gympat, those kind of players. and yet they really make it work into being solidly the best team in the world right now. I think Vitality briefly entered the conversation with the Cologne win, but then they bomb out of well, bomb out. They lose to Eternal Fire in a bracket which is basically given to them, to be honest, given how the draw they had. And they lose in the quarterfinal to Eternal Fire. So Navi definitely top one right now. Finally beat Spirit as well, which is
That's a
good
huge,
team to overcome. They keep their record against G2 as well. They've never lost to G2. 8-0 at this point in series.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Navi are the best team in the world right now.
They are. And Vitality, I think,
that's exciting.
team of the year, the contest becomes if they win Shanghai. That's it. If they win Shanghai, all of a sudden, it's Vitality v Navi. I think that's realistic. That's reasonable. And Vitality might even edge them just because of the caliber of events they've won rather than the number. But we'll see. They have to actually go do that. For now, it's definitely them. One small detail. Let's just make North America happy. Everyone get your round of applause ready. Complexity, beat phase. I mean, we love to see it. We love to see it. I mean, this iteration of Complexity beat phase, that has to be the caveat, because technically they have won before. But awesome. Great. Good for you. You've delayed your complete rebuild maybe by a week. That's about all it is. But yeah, it'll depend on RMRs. It'll depend on how the mage goes for them. Still not convinced on a lot of players, but that's a big win. To immediately go and lose to, what's it again? To Liquid is kind of funny because they got stomped by their domestic rival afterwards. So that kind of sucks, but hey, big win for them.
Yeah, big win. They beat Mouse twice as well. I think, honestly, maybe the more impressive thing is that they beat Mouse twice in the groups. Yeah, 2-0 as well. It wasn't really a big contest in either of the maps. Mouse didn't do shit. So yeah, they good work. I think beating FaZe, like, that's nice, but it was only delaying the inevitable. They were gonna lose to G2 in any case. So yeah, nice to get it over with a nice ultimate performance.
Yeah, awesome. Right. That wraps up Pro League, I think, for me. I mean, we've covered groups fairly extensively. There's not too many things to talk about. Like MIBR managed to beat teams. Heroic's probably a coin flip on paper, but given form, given history, it's fine. Beating M80 again, kind of expected. Nice. As much as M80 are papering over the cracks right now, the analogy I've used somewhere else was Flex Seal. Like, it's good. It, stops the water pouring out, but it's not a long-term solution. And yeah, that loss, I think, was inevitable. But otherwise, not too many big stories. I think it's been fairly predictable outside of the Eternal Fire run. But no, big best of 5 today. I'm going to be following. I'm rooting for Eternal Fire just because of my double swing picks. But I'm just hoping for a good game and a great level out of these two teams. So let's move on to the Eternal Shuffle. The segment that will never end, because teams are never happy. And why should they be? They always want to get better. And every week we've got a bunch of new transfers to talk about. And the first one kind of made me laugh. Bleed have cut Nexa after 2.5 months. Quacke, was there any reason to keep him? Did you see something that Kassad missed?
The only reason I would have expected keeping Nexa is if he was going back on the IGL and he wanted to try that whole thing. No, and everything he said suggests that this team is a fucking mess, and I'm really happy Hampus got out. Basically what Nexa said is that there were so many different views and so many different pulls in different directions about how to play the game and what to do. I think Nexa is about as happy to get benched as Bleed are to bench him. He didn't play well. He's not calling. He didn't want to call. It was never a conversation they had, according to Nexa. That was never a thought on this Bleed team. There's not too much to say. I think Nexa. I think the conversation is still the same. I think if Nexa lands on a team, I think if Nexa lands on a tier 2 team, there is still a chance for him to do good. I think he can find that sort of pre G2 level where he was a pretty good player. I think Bleed was never that environment, and I don't know if you can even right this ship at this point. I think Cypher, Knock, they would do best to get out of this project as soon as possible. I think Vladan, I guess, Jacob as well. I think Vladan has a good chance to just stick around, have some good maps, show what he can do. I don't know if you can right this ship. I just don't think so. Based on what Nexa said about this team,
Um,
it seems like a completely broken thing, like entirely. It wasn't Nexa and Hampus going against each other. It was just, I don't know. It seems like a mishmash of people who shouldn't be playing together.
I don't think it's entirely doomed. I genuinely think Nexa is just. I don't get the Nexa signing originally. Praying that he comes
No, it
back
makes
to his
no sense.
pre G2 level is expecting him to wind back the years 5 years. Last time he was a serviceable fucking fragger. He hasn't
Yep.
been one since then, and that's the long and the short of it. I only ever saw him as a good idea as a signing if you believed him as a caller, if that's what you wanted him to do. He's not a fragger right now, and hasn't been for a long time. So that was an ugly move in my eyes. But I
Yep.
still think this team's got solid foundations to work with. You've still got Cypher,
Mm.
who has been a very impactful player for them. Vladden was the player who never should have got cut. Honestly, that I think was just a missed opportunity. After Vladden joins, plays decently well, they then bench him in favor of Jacob, who's coming in, which I thought was the wrong cut to make for Jacob, because I agree on the signing initially, but keeping Farvan, cutting Vladden, silly. I just didn't get that part. So no, they've kind of made some of the right moves, but question is who's the fifth? Who's going to call? They've played one series with Patty. They lost a series, but a brand new IGL. I like Patty as a caller. I think he made a lot of terrible Danish players' careers, essentially, because those players are still not great players. It's all come down to calling and structure for them. So I think there's more IGL and coach credit needs to go around there. So maybe if they can make it work with Patty, we'll see. But I think, yeah, if there's conflicts of ideas, it's going to come between coach, Jacob, and IGL. I think that's going to be the big 3 points of conflict, and we'll see how they resolve it. But I still have faith in this project. It just takes a while to really figure out what to do here, because they've made some questionable moves that need to be adjusted. Next, Ents. Goofy leaves. Did anyone see this and think, oh, how? Because I personally really didn't.
I don't think Goofy did either. I think he was perfectly fine with this.
Yeah.
He's taking a prolonged break from competition, and that's probably good for him. I heard there's not much more to say about Goofy. He didn't play very well. More interesting, I think they're trialing Nate Yu for that position, and I think Glaive is also out of the practice team. So I think there's an IGL change coming as well.
Who's in? Do we know?
No idea. Absolutely no idea.
Okay.
But I think they trialed Nate Yu for Goofy's position, and that's a nice move, I think. I think Bleedo were also interested in him. I think that's kind of fallen through at this point. But
yeah, he played a series with Revenant as well that I thought was pretty impressive from him. Like, he played well, but
yeah.
I know that's not going to happen, so it's a shame.
Mm.
Personally, I would have liked that addition. Like, Revenant with Nechu,
yeah,
that's a good looking team, but yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah, I think Glaive was also out of the practice group. I think at least they were practicing without him, I think, which is interesting when you trial a new player without your in-game leader. That in-game leader is probably also getting. But yeah. Team, move. I guess the right IGL could right the ship again. It would be hilarious if it ends up being Nexa.
Fuck
But
off.
yeah. But no, I think Nate Yu coming in could be really cool.
Yeah.
Nate Yu, SDY, and Pody as like your star 3. That's kind of cool. Kyler has been half decent in the past as well. As
I've lost faith in
someone
him too, though. I'm going to be real
Yeah.
blunt. I don't want him on the team.
Yeah, no, I'd rather have someone else. But if you're only making 2 moves and you want to keep, if you end up keeping Kyler on the roster, I think Kyler could probably deliver a decent floor. But Nate Yu, Pody, SDY, that's an interesting core. And now we're talking, you can make it maybe square up to Gamer Legion.
I mean, you should be aiming for higher, but obviously, yeah, they're kind of in an awkward spot right now.
Yeah.
Never been a
Yeah.
big budget org. They've just managed to, over and over again, pick the right pieces and become bigger than they should be. Like, in terms of their results, reaching number 2 in the world under Snappy, even the runs they made as a Finnish roster with Alexi B, they've generally done a good job of picking up good IGLs, putting good pieces to, I don't know, occasionally finding gems in guys like Nerds and climbing back up. And yeah, it's up and down, but they're not a team that can pay the money required to stay up. Let's be real. Once
No,
they lose their players, they don't have that big influx to just, oh, let's just buy a bunch of guys. Like, no, they
yeah,
keep building
they
up. It's
do.
impressive, and hopefully they can do it again.
They also keep crashing down. I think that's just a natural sort of thing when you're this size of operation.
Yeah,
Because they did have the big finish rise, and they have the big finish fall. Then they rebuild, snappy, whoosh, almost like like in the top 5.
incredible. Yeah,
And then whoosh, they have to sell their players, and I think their results were kind of wavering slightly even before that. They have to sell their players, and they rebuild Polish, whoop, Katowice playoffs, and then
yeah.
now we're all back down again. Yeah,
that was the fluke to end all flukes. But yeah, they
it counts. It counts.
technically counts. I wouldn't count it as a big successful rebuild, but yeah,
Yeah, no.
they're looking for. I think at this point you cut Kylar. I don't mind keeping Glaive if you believe, but I probably think you end up with a cutting of Glaive and Netu +2. There's places to go. There's a team that can be made here, so I don't entirely hate it. But yeah, let's talk about the next team. We had a change. Game Legion have let go of Andu. Andu, who, and this frustrated me, was playing essentially off roles the moment Flamus came in. And it frustrated me initially because I thought Andu was really talented. Then I saw how fucking good Flamus was, and I was like, aight, make some space. This kid is also pretty good. But all in all, the team hasn't really found the right synergy with ZTR. It hasn't quite worked out. They've had some good results. Like they have made it top. They made the final of CCT Europe 11. They made it to the final of CCT Europe 10. But also made the RMR quite importantly. Sure, going 3-2, I believe, but who cares? It counts. They've managed to make it work for the biggest events. So they'll be one of those teams making a sub. Don't they have to announce it today though? Like.
They don't have to announce it today, but they need to have registered it with Valve by today.
Okay, so by today, Valve will know. We don't know yet, I believe is the
Valve
problem
will
for
know.
us.
They might announce it. I think Game Legion have never really beaten around the bush when it comes to transfers. I think they're always relatively quick with the replacement.
So it'll be a player who's playing. Is it coming through?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, I think
so it's an interesting position to fill because Andu, whilst talented, definitely needed to be in more aggressive spots, more rotated positions, and he needs to be the number one rifler, I think, on this team for it to really work. So I'm glad he's trying to find that in a different team. The player they bring in, honestly, this is another team. Netu is just currently like a fix-all for so many tier 2 teams because he has been so versatile and so quick to adapt to different positions whilst in the academy with Mouse and XT. And he played one series with Revenant, dropped a 1.18 or something, 2-1 win over Sinners, a team they've historically not been that strong against. They've struggled to beat them. I think he's shown a lot that teams are going to like. So he's always going to be the immediate thought, the immediate player we go to in our heads. I don't know who they're actually going to go and pick up, but I hope them best. Bloody hell, I hope for them all the best, and that they can make a good run at the RMR.
Yeah, so first of all, the caveat on Andrew is that Ash said some stuff about that transfer about like they wanted a player who lines up with our lines up with our vision, lines up with our mentality or whatever. And I think Bubsky said that that's like an indication that Andrew maybe was a bit problematic in some sense. Like he wasn't necessarily a bad player. It was just something else, which kind of doesn't paint him in a good light.
About it, yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, if he's just vocally unhappy with his spots, I mean, that could be enough to just be like, all right, cool, we'll cut you.
In that case, that's fine. But yeah, second point, I don't know if this is true, but what I've heard is that they might be trialing a Young Ninjas player, which in that case would be either Joe Cab or X-Casper Sky, which is both of them are very interesting transfers, I think.
They are, and Joe Cab, especially if I think for the roles would be the better option because X-Casper Sky, I'm like, we're kind of in the same problem, aren't we?
Yeah, and they posted when Mistem left, they haven't benched their entire roster. They're still trying to keep all of the Young Ninjas players, but they wanted to give them a fair chance to be like, we are going to rebuild, and if you guys want to stay, we're going to rebuild around you guys, but you've also sort of played up your stock, and if you want to look for opportunities, you're allowed to, and we can negotiate transfers for you guys. Threat basically said this as well 2 days ago. I'm quoting directly, Young Ninjas doesn't have a full squad. We've allowed the players to see what is on the market until we find a new coach and teammate. The project continues, but like their career prospects are equally important. So like, yeah, they are up for grabs. And in a market where most of the good teams players are already locked into an RMR spot. Like we said, Altex, for example, can't play for Sashi, that sort of thing. In that sort of market, I think Mouse NXT and Young Ninjas are pretty much the only two teams you'd want to pick players from if you're a team like Game Religion. So yeah, I think they've done a good job there to sort of not let them go, but like let them see what's out there. And like I said, no idea if that's actually true. If it's true that they've trialed either JoeCab or X-Casper Sky, but they need to lock it in by today. And I think both of those would be very good pickups. X-Casper Sky is the stats guy, but role wise, I think JoeCab might be better. But
yeah, that's kind of how I see
that's
it
something.
too.
Yeah,
But okay,
we'll see. Both of them would be very interesting.
they've got a gap to fill. I'm sure they'll do a good job. They've usually done a decent job scouting and optimizing their rosters despite shit players. So that's something Game Legion deserves a lot of credit for. Finally, on our list, the Huns. They have cut, or the player has separated themselves. I don't actually know. It's just the two players have left, them being Score and Tamir officially leaving the team. Haven't really been active for the last like 3 months, this team. So it's a bit odd to talk about. But the Huns going to lose a lot here. I mean, Tamir by himself, I mean, not a great fragger, not a player you really think of. He's just a veteran of the Mongolian scene, but Score, huge rifle in terms of his presence, his impact, his tenure. One of the best Mongolian players of the last few years. Did have some issues with Blitz, essentially, in terms of the fit, which is why he's not on that roster. Same thing for Annihilation, if you remember that player. I think he's a player who needs to be a star and need to have a voice, a lot more vocal than I think Blitz and Mara are really happy with. So he's had to do the rounds on some other teams. Played a decent level on the Huns, but after Yami left, that team kind of felt short of firepower for the region. And so here we are, which are a bit of a disappointing spell for the roster. They've let go of 2 players, or 2 players have left, including probably their best player. So kind of a weird spot for the Huns. Probably going to have to rebuild with more kids, as a lot of these Mongolian teams tend to
do. Yeah, I don't have any notes. I just put this in because Score is still an interesting player. I think Score is still someone who should hang in better circles than he does.
Still 22 as well. A lot of time left.
Yeah, I do wonder if he just ended up on this team because like that was what was available to him. Because he did a spell on Tyloo, got kind of. I mean, anybody who plays for Tyloo gets kind of fucked over eventually. But yeah, I do wonder, like, in this, he's obviously not back on the Mongols. They won't make a change, and they've already had him. They probably don't want him. I do wonder if he has a spot on like revamp IHC because they have a new roster as well. I wonder if he has a spot on like Atox, reunite with Annihilation, try to make something happen there. Maybe Chinggis Warriors could be something because they've also had the odd upset game here and there. I think. Did they make it into the RMR? No, but yeah, they very nearly did. Yeah, I'd see him on some of those teams for sure.
I think an Atox signing especially would be fun because you look at the roster, you're thinking Dobu, Annihilation, Yami already fairly like firepower forward. You replace like someone like MIQ. I think Cabal's calling, if I'm not going crazy. I don't remember exactly. I'm not as locked into Asia as some others. But I think just in terms of raw firepower, they'd be one of the best teams in in Mongolia. It's just a question of how would it work in terms of roles, in terms of synergy. But no, reuniting with Yami, but also more importantly with Annihilation, would be a really interesting story, I think. That'd be a cool little move.
Cabal was also on IHC. I was trying to remember that. Yeah, he was also there with Annihilation. And then he was substitute for a bit, which I guess was just him being benched. But yeah, he was there. Annihilation, Cabal, Score, reunion. I'd take that. Hell yeah.
Yeah, would be curious. But that's pretty much all the Eternal Shuffle this week. Relatively small, but still, there's always something going down. Brings us on to probably the best segment, Prospects of the Week. The one we make the special graphics for, the one we find out our little picks. And I'm going to go first. I had a couple players to choose between. I liked Xanta. He had a good week. He's been on my radar for a little while now. But I've ended up going with another player from the academies. I've taken Ryu, who is... I mean, he's played briefly with Monty, and it wasn't a particularly successful time. I mean, he's playing a lot on a roster where there's another academy kid. He's not really going to get his roles because he needs to play like sort of Demka roles a lot of the time. Like he's playing a heavy trader, the occasional like opening role on the T side. CT side, he's going to be one of your better anchors or site players. Can rotate, but generally just a Swiss Army knife of a rifler who can do so many things super well. And he's been a monster on Monty Gen this week. I believe the numbers are a 1.3 rating, which is really impressive, honestly. That's even in tier 2, just putting up those sorts of fragging numbers will always be respected. He's doing it on both sides of the match as well, like 1.4 on T side, 1.2 on CT side. Just a big week. This is a roster that I think to me wasn't that impressive initially when I looked at it on paper, but really the fact that he stepped up so high has been critical. They've been able to pick up huge wins, not just this week, but over the course of the last couple months or so, put themselves on the map. And yeah, Ryu, it's all about you.
Yeah. I sang this guy's praises a while ago, like long before he had an HLTV profile, because I just noticed him here and there. I can't remember where I picked up on him. If it was FPL or it was he might have been playing ESEA League at around the same time as, we were paying attention to Lithuania a little bit extra.
Maybe.
He was around. He was around. He was a good player. And he still is a good player. He had a shot at Monty. I wonder if that experience plays in favor or against him career-wise. Like, is he a better player because of being on the main team or a worse player? I don't know. He's showing up on that like big potential, and that's very nice. Yeah, I don't have a lot of notes on this either. A good player, nice.
Yeah, big
They're
fan.
stomping a lot of games right now, and he is the guy behind it.
It really is.
I
Like
can't remember.
beating Passion UA, like that's an
Yeah.
achievement. They're a really good tier 2 side. A bunch of kids as well, but you got to go beat them. They're very tough.
If you want to compare, like Gizmi was also on the main team, and like I would probably have said that Gizmi was a slightly better player in that period when it was him and Ryu stepping into the main team.
Yeah.
They had some roster troubles. Now I would absolutely say that Ryu is the better player now that they're back in this academy team.
My instinct says
so
that Gizmi got his roles a little closer to what he's used to, what he wants to be doing. You know, because they did sort of need a guy who's going to entry, going to be like very almost supportive in that sense, but yeah, hard on the openings and allowed to rotate a lot on CT side. So I guess that was kind of what he got to do when they stepped up.
Yep. Nice. I've picked another guy who I've picked before. It is Poi, who is back. He's had an absolutely horrendous time on Eyeballer so far, but they've had some revamps. They have a JW as an in-game leader, and they have 2 players still on trial. I think they are going to end up being signed. I don't know. That's not an inside information kind of thing. That's just a suspicion. Dex and Della have come in, and I think they've done a decent job. They played a decent level. Eyeballers are still trash, but whatever they've done, they managed to fix Poi, and Poi is now playing extremely well again. He's up to 114, which is really good when you're only winning 2 out of 7 games this past week. And you're losing to opposition you shouldn't lose to. But yeah, I just have to talk about Poi because I think he's finally being freed up to play more of the star roles, more so than being sacrificed for the team, and that's really playing in his favor. That's whether they end up capitalizing on that, as in whether Eyeballers become a good team because of it. That's at least probably the first step. Make your star signing play star roles, and that's good job. And yeah, I don't have a lot more notes. This is a very somber, a very low-key endorsement of Poi. But genuinely, I think it is exciting that he's finally playing at a very good level. And I'm excited about the Poi Dex duo because Dex also someone who is a very he's been touted as a very good player. He hasn't really had those big stat maps where he absolutely carries. He's just fairly talented mechanically, and I think that duo could be interesting on Eyeballers for sure. But yeah. On yeah, I mean it's very I don't expect Eyeballers to actually, turn this into big success, which is why I'm a bit,
Yeah, it's
here and
ups
there.
and downs.
But I
Yeah.
absolutely believe if Poi can stay at this level, if Poi can keep playing these positions and keep playing as well as he has done for the past 2 weeks, honestly, since they made the changes, if he can stay there, there is hope for him after Eyeballers at the very least. So I'll, yeah, big props to Poi, and happy belated birthday.
Okay, woo, cake, yay. Anyway, more importantly, the analysis, because when he was new into Eyeballers, his numbers didn't just go down, they plummeted. And I was wondering why. T-Side Mirage was being the comparison I ended up going to, just to see what the hell had changed. And immediately you could notice in gun rounds, the things Poi wanted to do, the things he got to do whilst on Little Mix, the things that netted him frags, impact, his team wins, he wasn't doing. The most egregious example being he liked to get boosted into window on the T-Side Mirage. After taking mid control, he'd play the smoke fade, he'd challenge jungle, he'd be that guy. Immediately, the first map I open, he's boosting Golden into window. Why? Who the fuck wants Golden in key fragging positions? Not just now, ever. It was ridiculous to me. And yeah, just I then had to watch Poi get shot in the back from short as he's trying to make a connector play to support Golden in window. Like, this is just painful. But there's been a big shift in the stats that I haven't watched many of his games, but the numbers, at least in terms of his profiling, has told me, yes, he is now being treated like the star player he is. He's not a bitch entry as often. He's trading. He's being set up for proper openings. He's the star. I do think, as you've said, this roster's doomed. They don't have real good leadership, structure, probably even coaching. I'm not sure who is coaching, if anyone. This Eyeballers roster's Kev is listed. No offense, buddy. I don't have much to say. It's positive about the way your team plays, and probably therefore you. But maybe now starting to get the fucking like picture in your head that Poi is talented and needs to be the guy. I often hear when this sort of thing happens, I always hear like, oh, you know, it took him some time to find his voice, decide like, bro, you have access to the demos too. Like, tell him to do these things that he used to do. If he's not suggesting himself because he's a bit shy, a bit nervous, I don't give a toss. Stick something like behind him, poke him with it, like go forward, go do your thing. That's what needs to happen, honestly. And he's mega talented. I really hope it works out for him. Eyeballers need a complete fucking like overhaul if they're going to be a legit tier 2 like contender team. But for now, just glad Poise found something.
They have a very long road up to the level where they want to be and where like where they should be. I struggle to say that almost considering they've never been there, but I think where they want to be, where you know their ambition level and where Sweden wants a team like Eyeballers to be, if they want to be there, they have a very long road. But absolutely the first step to that was to make Poi work. And if they can sustain this now that they are making Poi work, you know, get working on step 2. Like that's whatever that may be. So yeah, good job. And you know, big ups to Poi as well, because he's it's not just a matter of like put him in start positions and he's gonna work. Like he's absolutely put in the work as well. There is an individual component to it as well. It's not just the team. So yeah, huge props.
Yeah, great pick, and that kind of wraps up the show. So yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed. If you made it this far, you're my hero. Remember, leave a comment telling us why we're wrong. We always appreciate the feedback, and yeah, it's good interaction. Members get access to more because they are better, so be sure to become a member. It costs £2 a month, and you get access to basically an entire second channel, so go do that. It'll be greatly appreciated.
Leave comments about G2. I love G2 comments, and this week, Snacks didn't have a single positive KD KPR, and if anyone can defend that performance in relation to Hooksie's performance on G2, which was apparently, you know, pitchfork, the mob are coming for you because you're so bad individually, the worst individual player of all time. If anyone can defend that in relation, like Snacks' performance in relation to what Hooksie did, leave a comment, and I would love to read it. I will reply to all of them. Come into my DMs, I don't care.
That 0 firepower is exactly what G2 needed to make a top 4 run. 0 firepower at ESL Pro League. Insane level of performance. What a god. Good thing we got rid of that fucking shitter Hooksie. Right. That's the episode. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.